yeah, if you think you're going to do it in your own strength, and you know what? Yeah, you can do it.
COVID, it's been helping people move their businesses from offline or brick and mortar to online.
Systems are more important than skills as an entrepreneur today.
It's totally okay to reinvent yourself multiple times, especially when you're an entrepreneur.
Welcome to Profitable Coaching Conversations with WendyY Bailey. If you're a coach, speaker, or industry expert, you're in the right place for sales and marketing wisdom and insight to grow your coaching business. Now, here's your host, Income Acceleration Mentor, WendyY Bailey.
Hello, everyone, and welcome again to this special episode of the Profitable Coaching Conversation Show. I'm WendyY Bailey, and May is Mental Health Awareness Month. So I'm excited to introduce you to one of my favorite people in the world. He is my only offspring, my favorite offspring. He is also just an amazing all-around guy. I love telling you about him. I'm going to get him to tell you more about himself. But can I just say I'm a proud mom? I'm totally a proud mom. My son is a best-selling author. He'll tell you more about his book. He's also a certified life coach and just, again, an all-around amazing guy. And of course, I'm not biased. Everybody say hello to my son, Max Bailey.
Hey there. So as before mentioned, I am the offspring. My
favorite offspring.
As you stated, I am the favorite offspring, just to reiterate. But also, I would attribute a lot of my strengths as well as my ability to be where I am right now. I would attribute that to being your offspring, because one thing that I will say, growing up, I was allowed the space to kind of find my way, even when the way wasn't clear. So I'll start off by saying that.
Hold on before we get to that. Let me make sure I say that you're here for Mental Health Awareness Month because at the age of 4, you were diagnosed with Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder. And so I want you to kind of start sharing a little bit about what it was like for you before the diagnosis, when you were diagnosed at 4, when you really understood that there was something different for you.
Being diagnosed at 4, I can't really remember back that far, but the first point in time where I felt like I noticed that there might be something different would have to be back in elementary school, when I would pour myself into the work and I would try to concentrate as much as I felt like my counterparts would, but I would really have a difficulty retaining the information and learning it the same way. I really needed a very much a hands-on approach. And in some teachers, I received that, which was a great deal of help for me. It aided me a lot. Miss Williams, as I'm sure you know, among some others. But it's one of those sort of things where it kind of points out some of the problems with the educational system. It doesn't really allow for people to think outside the box and think differently about how to come to certain conclusions and certain things.
The thing I remember you telling me a story about was you had a math problem and you got the answer, but the teacher wanted to see your work and you couldn't show them the work. You just knew how to get to the answer without, documenting the work. That's a different way of looking at learning. And I think ADHD can be seen that way for sure.
Right. I would definitely agree. And that's one thing that I would say was probably the biggest hurdle for me to get over. I would venture to say all the way into my adulthood was really just becoming comfortable with the idea and more so the fact that I had to learn things differently. But it was okay from the standpoint that in learning things differently, in some ways I picked up things quicker than other people. In some ways I found better solutions or better ways to find solutions than other ways that were pre-established.
Yeah.
And I think that's why, in my mind, ADHD is kind of one of those things where it kind of has a stigma, but it really is a gift at the end of the day. You know, just to go back to introducing myself a little bit. You know, I would consider myself a multifaceted guy. My mom, you know, you've coined the term
Flashy.
flashy.
You're
Yeah.
flashy.
Uh,
So
yeah.
do you want me to give that definition, or you want to give it?
You can give your definition. I was actually just gonna flesh out what that means for me.
Gotcha.
You know?
Go ahead.
So for me, it just means that I don't have to be confined to the stereotype of you can only do one thing. You have to put all your work and all your effort and all your heart and spirit into this one thing and hope that that one thing works out. Whereas, you know, with ADHD, it allows you to think outside the box in a way where you could be multifaceted in a wide variety of arenas, whether it's business, whether it's arts, whether it's sciences, whether it's, you know, just in terms of processing information and kind of merging the right and the left brain. Because I'm very much, I believe it's left brain. I'm very much creative. I'm very much, you know, free flowing, but it allows me to use the right side, the logical side, in a different way than, say, someone who is more closely right-brained. It will allow me to go into certain arenas, like, for instance, the cannabis industry. It kind of allows me to put my sales hat on, but also be able to incorporate real experiences that I've had, as well as empathize enough with people through the different experiences that I've had, where, you know, my ADHD and also my personality have taken me, to be able to empathize with those people on those different levels, to be more proficient at my job than I might otherwise.
Yeah, and for the folks who are watching, you're the manager at a CBD store. So the reason you talk about cannabis in that way, I've actually seen you in action, and the thing that I've noticed is exactly what you described. You know what I mean? Like, you're able to share your own experiences. I've seen people walk into the store and you ask what brings them in today, and they tell you some anxiety, they tell you, you know, some pain, whatever it is, and you can say, oh, I've experienced that too. Or I've, you know, worked with other people who have had similar challenges, and let me tell you a little bit more about how this can help you the way that it helped them. Yeah, you definitely have inserted yourself into that. I want to make sure that for the audience, I define what I mean by slashy. One of my digital mentors said that he was traveling, he was speaking somewhere, and I heard him speaking. And he said he was traveling and he met this guy who said he was a slashy. And he said, oh, what's a slashy? He said, oh, I'm a musician slash fashion designer slash model slash. So he called himself a slashy. And Max, you're very much a slashy because you're a total creative, like you said, but you've got your logic side of your brain, your sense of order that you've had to create because of your ADHD, because it's not natural the way that you order things. It's become natural because you've learned how to be orderly and, as you say, compartmentalize things in a way that gives you some logical sense of order to whatever it is. But you're a musician slash salesman slash poet slash rapper slash singer slash, I mean, like slashy, like you're
Right.
a slashy, you know, true and true for sure.
Right.
So what have been some of your greatest challenges growing up with ADHD?
Number one was really the obstacles that were created for me as a byproduct of the knowledge that I had ADHD. You know, it was, you know, being kind of put behind the curve because there was a little bit more difficulty in helping me learn the information. And because of that, you know, I think that they just lob everybody into this one I guess for lack of a better way of putting it, my understanding now of it is the bad bunch, the ones that have trouble learning, the ones that have to learn differently. They kind of lob them all in together and teach them all the same way, even though that necessarily isn't necessarily the way to go about it either. And I would say those are the things that kind of railroaded me in a lot of aspects, because I had teachers that would know that I had trouble learning certain things and knew that I had full capability to learn those things, but didn't necessarily want to take the time because it wasn't in their interest to do so.
Yeah. Yeah. Like you said in the beginning, Max, it really is like um, a flaw in the education system that created that. The thing that I learned to be, and I think it has served you as you've grown older, is I learned how to be an advocate for you. Because when you were diagnosed, they immediately stuck you into a resource program, a special education, special needs program, which required an individualized education plan, which is an IEP. And what they thought I wasn't going to pay attention to as a parent was that language that says they have to support you in the least restrictive environment. And what that means is if you could function in a general classroom, they had to make sure you had general education support in that general classroom. Those are some of the things I advocated for you on your behalf. I will say that even though I was an advocate and not necessarily a friend to your resource teacher, she really helped you. You said Ms. Williams and others, but your resource teacher in the first grade helped you, giving you that individualized attention so that you learned how to read faster and you developed a real interest in reading as a result. I thought that was phenomenal.
For sure.
Yeah, and you still enjoy reading today. We're going to take a break. When we come back, I want you to talk a little bit more about the book and how you decided to come up with the book. Do you have a copy of it with you can show?
I don't, unfortunately.
Okay, well, I've got your picture, so I'll share your picture and hopefully that'll give folks an idea of about your book. So we'll be right back. So we're back and we're talking with my son, Max Bailey, who is talking about what it's been like growing up living with ADHD, or Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder. So, I wanted you to say a little bit more about the book. So let me just show this picture to everyone so they can see you when you found out you were a best-selling author of this great book. What's the name of the book, and tell us a little bit about it? What led you to write the book?
You Improvement. So You Improvement is all about, taking what you got. Just let me backtrack a little bit. So life coaching for me was an extension of my own journey. And within my own journey, my ADHD coupled with my adolescence caused me to make certain choices that took me certain places. And as a result, I really had to have a long hard talk with myself, or quite a few long hard talks with myself, become very introspective, become very reflective on how my emotions led me to make certain decisions that didn't necessarily work out the way that they could have, or whether they worked out or not, just really addressing what transpired and why, and what responsibility and effect I had to those situations. So going through the ups and downs that was my younger adult life, it was really just figuring out um, how much control I actually had over the outcomes that I would experience.
Consequences and choice.
Well, yeah, I was actually going to say it's all about weighing the risk versus the reward, you know, and I realize that it's about those choices, those small choices in each and every moment that kind of make up the big picture of, you know, the avenues that your life goes down. And for me, it was kind of one of those situations where I would have conversations with other people and have aha moments where I would hear people kind of echo some of the same sentiments that I had or continue to have. And so the book became an extension of that, from the standpoint that I was like, okay, I'm able to frame this, I'm able to come up with this methodology in terms of figuring out things for myself. So in terms of figuring out things for myself, in that same out of the box thinking that keeps my left brain going nonstop, I was able to pair it with the right brain to frame it in a way where other people could read it and kind of relate to it, and in a way kind of adopt some of those same methodologies to address their own problems. Because you know, it's a tenet of life coaching, coaching period, I would say. Hurt people, and help, and heal people, or help people, you know, whatever vernacular you want to use, but it's very true. And people don't realize the effects that the little things that they do have on a grander scale in life with people and the relationships that they have. So if we're able to pinpoint those things as far as our hiccups and our hangups and our traumas and, you know, trials, we can be that much better prepared to face what's coming next. And for me now, I think that that's why I have such a good streak lately, I would say these last couple years, of being able to maneuver through certain situations where in the past I don't know that it would have worked out that way, simply because I have the wherewithal to weigh that risk versus reward dynamic. You know, I'm able to look and make the choice. Okay, what am I risking in doing this? And if I do it and it works out, what's the reward? Was it worth it? What did the ends justify the means? Those sort of things. And if we can be more conscious, I feel like we can be better equipped to deal with what comes at us each time that it comes at us. And
Whatever
I mean that
it is. Yeah.
right. And I mean that as far as people with, but also particularly because, for the sake of the conversation, people with ADHD. You know, the hyperactivity element. This is something I want to touch on too. A lot of people think that it is energy, that it just means that I am going, and I'm manic almost, or I'm spastic. You know, but it's not that sort of thing. It just means that there is a chemical imbalance that is causing my brain to convey misinformation. And based on that misinformation, sometimes my emotions can be hyped. Sometimes they can be all the way out of whack. And if you're able to use that logic, use that methodology in place of those emotions, you're better suited to sort through those situations, not making reactive choices, but more rational choices for a better outcome.
Yeah. I know that thank you for giving that definition from your perspective, because I don't know that I've ever heard you say it that way. So I think that's amazing. I know that we've talked about it before, not in this conversation, but growing up, you had medication therapy, so to speak. You had play therapy with your therapist, a psychologist, and then you had medication as a tool to manage your hyperactivity, right? Your ADHD. So from your perspective, back to as far as you remember, what was it like for you taking the medication?
I actually have the same conversation many times a week at the store.
Okay.
From the standpoint that I know a lot of people are looking into using cannabis as a way to help out with ADHD and other neurological things. There are some benefits that I've seen personally. One thing that I would say that I tell them is I didn't like the fact that it felt like I was caged inside of my own head. It felt like I was watching my life on the TV monitor. And I was only allowed to make, I would say, binary choices, like yes or no, stop or go, talk or don't. And it created this further imbalance because I needed that structure during the week, but you would let me off for the weekends, so that way I wasn't medicated 24/7
all the time. Yeah.
But what would happen is it would be like, if you kept a kid in a cage for
5 days.
5 days and then let him free for 2 days, like what's that kid gonna do? He's gonna do, it's like the reference, there's this line that I like to quote, and I like lines and phrases, but
Yeah.
there's this line from The Dark Knight where he's like, I'm like a dog chasing cars. I don't know what I'd ever do if I ever caught one, but I just do things. And that's kind of how it was for me coming out of that caged experience. I would just come out and be like, okay, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to do something, whether I'm happy, whether I'm angry, whether I'm
You're
sad.
pretty off the charts. You were pretty off the charts.
Yeah. And it was because of that ebb, I call it. It's that you have it in your system and then you don't, and then you're swaying to one extreme from one extreme to another. So another thing that I would say about the medication is, looking back, I attribute to some of the things that might have shown up as my personality, but weren't as a byproduct of taking the medication. Like I'm a shy and introverted guy, but I can be very extroverted when I want to be.
Yeah, I never thought of you as introverted, shy and introverted.
But the medication would make it so. Like I am more of an introvert, especially now, because I think that's just where that's just where my healthy space is, being an introvert, especially considering everything, where everything is now. But I think that the medication, because of how it kept me caged, there were things that I would there were responses that I had to certain things, or lack thereof, that I feel like would have been different had I had something different in place to help out with my ADHD.
Other than the medication.
Right. Like for instance, I felt like if say back then, if I did have something like CBD, I think that there would be a lot more things that I would have shown up as a little more outgoing in school. Because as a person, don't get me wrong, I'm outgoing, but in that setting, because of all those things commingled together, I think it just really kind of repressed me, so that way I wasn't the person who people know me as now. When Max is in the room.
Yeah, I was getting ready to say, I don't know that I ever saw that. I always, as a parent, wanted you to be whoever you could be and would be,
Right.
And I think that from my perspective as an advocate, as your parent, the medication, from my perspective, gave you, allowed you to sit still long enough to learn some foundational things that would support you in life, right? And when we got to maybe high school, late in high school, like 11th, 12th grade, somewhere in there, it was clear to me that you no longer wanted to be on the medication. And we spent a lot of time talking about what that would mean for you. And there's some choices that came out of that I think, again, I don't know that I've ever seen you as an introvert. So when you said that, I was kind of like, really? Okay. I don't know that I ever saw that. What I see in you today as an adult is you're the product. It's the product of everything you did growing up, learning how to manage yourself and to be that introspective guy. I never would have thought you would become a life coach. Like, that's just not what I thought. That's something you wanted to do. And I've seen the impact of that journey and that study and that certification on how you process your own thoughts and look at life. So, just to kind of go back to where we started with the book, you wrote the book to help other people process things in their world in a different way. It's written specifically to millennials, right?
Right. So people in my age group, anywhere between 25 to 35.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's written in your language. It's written in the language of the 25 to 35-year-old,
For
which I
sure.
loved. When you realized that the medication didn't give you what you needed and what you felt you wanted at the time, let's fast forward a little bit to being an adult. And when you identified that cannabis was one of those things that would help you, how has that helped you differently to deal with, to cope with your ADHD? Because it's not gone away. You've just learned how to manage yourself with the diagnosis of ADHD. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would agree. For me with cannabis, marijuana was something that I used to medicate with for quite a while,
Mm-hmm.
as you know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but the thing about using marijuana is it didn't do anything to help out with the anxiety, the immense anxiety that the hyperactivity from the ADHD brought.
Yeah.
And I couldn't seem to find anything that would help out with that. When the CBD came, into the picture, it kind of gave me that framework to kind of really sit down and be able to focus and delve into some things without the anxiety of not finishing it, or what's it gonna be, or how's it gonna turn out, or
Mm-hmm.
all these things that it's like a mentor of mine used to say, all these things that you're thinking about, they're all in your head, and in the moment I'm like, what do you mean they're all in my head? And it makes sense from the standpoint that um with the ADHD, for me, it would create this anxiety out of all the things that I thought could happen that hadn't actually taken place yet. And as a result, it would kind of create this paralyzing fear for me. And I wouldn't do a lot of the things that I want to, or I wouldn't finish a lot of the things that I want to. So for me, the CBD kind of put it in a picture where I could still be as creative as I wanted to be, but I could still be able to implement the logic the way that I wanted to, having help on a chemical level and not necessarily just having to cold turkey it with methodology alone. Because the reality is that, and I want to make sure that people are clear on this. Cannabis can help a lot of people, but it's not a cure. There are some people who really do need medications. But on a wider scale, in the bigger scope of things, I think that um it's important to note that people need help on a chemical level. You can have all the exercises in the world. You can, try all the different
Yeah.
practices you want, but sometimes you just need that help on a biological homeostatic level. And whether it's cannabis or pharmaceutical medications, or whatever, I just think that it needs to be the sort of thing that works for you, works for what your goals are, and works for your overall health in the long term,
Yeah.
uh is what I would say.
Yeah. So we're going to take another break. And when we come back, I'd love for you to share a parting thought, maybe something you want to make sure people walk away from our conversation with. Sound good?
Cool.
Okay. We'll be right back. So welcome back. We've been talking with my son, Max Bailey, about attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Now, it's been a real journey for you being diagnosed at 4 all the way up to being an adult now. You're a best-selling author. We're going to share the link to your book in the show notes. But if there's one thing you really, really want people to walk away from this conversation, remembering that it's Mental Health Awareness Month, what is that one thing?
First and foremost, above all, really understanding that when it comes to ADHD, when it comes to a lot of mental disorders, neurological disabilities, whatever, phrase, terminology you want to use, they are not detriments. They are not things that to be ashamed of. If anything, it gives people superpowers. I'm actually working on I've been working on a children's book called Me and My Friend AD, and it's really just shattering the stigma that people have when it comes to ADHD in particular, but mental illness in general. In that, it going back to what we started out the conversation with, really shattering that myth that you're less than because you have to learn a different way. If anything, it's the different ways that we learn things that allow us to survive and thrive and evolve as a society. Studies that have come out in the last 20 years have, overshadowed the ones that came before them because information is always changing. The beauty with knowledge is that you're never done learning. You're never done being able to elevate. You're never done being able to educate. And with that, that's where mental disorders, chemical imbalances, those are all a part of the evolutionary process. We have to go through these things in order for people to think outside the box, like Stephen Hawking. Just think about that, and all the other people who were not regular or who had, all these other obstacles in their way. But in the face of all those hardships, all that adversity, they were still able to show why they were a viable asset, if not one of the most viable assets to society as a whole. So that's what I would leave people with, that really just don't underestimate us. If anything,
For yourself.
Right.
Everybody's watching and they're hearing themselves in this.
Right.
The whole month has really been about helping you to have some insight into people with mental illness, mental disorders, and how we thrive. And I say we because I'm part of that as well. I remember years ago, my pastor asked me, does mental illness run in your family? And it made me think, I don't think anyone had ever asked that question of me before, but then I realized, oh, wait, yeah, it does run in my family. Because I realized I have mental illness, you have mental illness. There are my parents, I think one of them has had mental illness, maybe that went undiagnosed. Whatever the case is, yes is the answer to that question. And when I answered that question, it just opened up a box for me in terms of enlightenment about how I saw myself. It didn't make me feel like there was a deficit, like you said. It made me feel like I had superpowers. And the more I lean into that, the more I thrive with mental illness. And I think that's the point you're trying to make. Yeah. So thank you so much for being here, my favorite offspring, my only offspring. Thank you for being here.
You're welcome.
Yeah. It's been a delight talking with you. It always is. I'm a proud mom, everybody. I'm a proud #still my baby mom. And this has been a special episode of the Profitable Coaching Conversation Show, where we've been talking with Max Bailey about attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. We're going to share some additional resources to support you, but be sure to join us for the next episode of the Profitable Coaching Conversation Show. Take care, everybody. Thanks.
Thanks so much for tuning into Profitable Coaching Conversations with WendyY Bailey. Be sure to join us at the after party at www.profitablecoachingsociety.com. We'll see you next time for more sales and marketing wisdom and insight from WendyY and her amazing guests. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you know when new episodes are posted.